I'm Aaron Parks. Medicaid is a complex program, far more complex than what is contained in the Oklahoma Department of Human Services Policy Manual. For instance, there are federal statutes and regulations and controlling case law that all impact eligibility for Medicaid, if you know to assert your rights. In this video, I'm going to share with you a little about another Oklahoma Medicaid court case that was decided by the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in 2013. This case was, in some respects, a follow-up to Leroy Morris versus the Oklahoma Department of Human Services, decided by the same court in 2012, which is the subject of a separate video. The case for this video is George Gragert versus the Oklahoma Department of Human Services, and like the Morris case, it deals specifically with Medicaid eligibility for a married couple, where one spouse requires care, known as the institutionalized spouse, and the other is healthy, the community spouse. The difference here is that instead of an annuity, Mr. Gragert used a promissory note to gain Medicaid eligibility. The question in the Gragert case is whether a promissory note meeting certain Medicaid rules constitutes an asset under the rules. As in the Morris case, the Medicare Catastrophic Coverage Act of 1988 and the creation of the Community Spouse Resource Allowance is central to understanding the issue here. Specifically, the court in Gragert stated, a couple's combined resources are counted in determining Medicaid eligibility for an institutionalized spouse, but the income of the community spouse is not included. The court went on, a couple may convert joint resources, which may affect Medicaid eligibility, into income for the community spouse, which does not impact eligibility, by purchasing certain types of income-generating investments. Oklahoma Medicaid borrows many of its rules from Social Security regulations, including that DHS use criteria no more restrictive than the eligibility requirements under the Supplemental Security Income Act. The SSI regulations define what is considered a resource under the Medicaid rules. The SSI regulations state that, quote, if the individual has the right, authority, or power to liquidate the property, it is considered a resource. But if not, the property is not considered a resource. A resource is liquid if it can be converted to cash within 20 days. With that in mind, let's dive into the Gragert case. Before applying for Medicaid, Mr. and Mrs. Gragert sold a rental property to their son for $28,800, which constituted fair market value. In return, their son gave them a promissory note for the purchase price plus interest. Because there was an equal exchange, there's no issue of a penalized transfer, but the Gragerts can qualify for Medicaid only if the promissory note is not an asset or a resource under the Medicaid rules. Prior to the federal court case, Oklahoma DHS had denied eligibility for Mr. Gragert on the basis that the promissory note was a countable resource that placed his assets too high to qualify. Mr. Gragert argued that the terms of the note expressly provide that the lender, his wife, may not grant, bargain, sell, assign, convey, or transfer the note or any payments hereunder. Importantly, DHS offered no evidence to rebut the conclusion that the terms of the note prevented from being converted to cash, making it a liquid resource. Promissory notes are ordinarily liquid. The Social Security Program Operation Manual supports this, stating, notes count as resources for eligibility purposes unless there is evidence of a legal bar to their sale. However, if the note cannot be transferred or sold, it is not a resource. The court in Gragert concluded that the terms of the promissory note prevented its sale or transfer, so DHS could not consider it a resource. Therefore, Mr. Gragert was eligible for Medicaid. As with other Medicaid legal planning, the court's opinion, and especially the procedure of implementing these planning options, are very complex and much more than we can cover in a short video. The use of promissory notes in planning is an effective tool to obtain Medicaid eligibility, but it must be done carefully. In my law practice, I focus on helping people understand and utilize all the rules and the court cases that help them get the best possible outcome on their Medicaid application. There are many tools available to create the best possible outcome for a Medicaid application. Knowing how to use all the tools, including things you won't find in the rulebook, make a big difference in the outcome.